That's looking good. Yep, so just to remind people, if you have got your 2 tasting bottles, i.e. if you've got your tasting box with you, we'll be tasting our Merry Legs and Jeremy's Kefnid Hifrid. Apologies for my Welsh. So I will start. I think we're at 12:02. I think no point in hanging on further. So thank you everyone for coming to this session today. My name's Chris Atkins. I'm involved with Ragged Stone Cider and Perry, and also with Lucy and her brand, which is Naked Orchards. The talk today is, of course, about Perry, Unique and Boutique, which was the title of my talk last year for this, but it never happened. And what I'm going to do today, I can't do everything in 3/4 of an hour, is to give you a brief history, a global picture of where we within the 3 counties sit in the globe with regards to Perry, and just a heads up on the forthcoming Perry Festival, which apparently is still going ahead. It will be 3 days, not 2, in September, at the end of September, at the 3 Counties Showground. We ran it very successfully 2 years ago in 2019, and we're hoping to run it even bigger this year. If you want to ask questions during the session as I'm talking, by all means. I may not see them. Tom may see them and stop me and prompt me, but don't wait to the end. By all means, just ask your question as it's relevant. So, what have the Romans ever done for us? A good place to start, I think. Well, they probably introduced the Perry Pear, and that's where our story starts, and we'll get back to that shortly. Now, Perry is enjoying a resurgence, and there are now 3 national collections in the UK preserving the genetic uniqueness, and that's following the demise of the rural orchards and concern about this important genetic material just disappearing forever. If you've only experienced Perry in the form of Babycham, then now is the time to look at this boutique product, and it has an unbelievable breadth of styles. From Dry Still Farmhouse to Sparkling Bottle Fermented, Bottle Conditioned, what I describe as Poiré type. Perry's defining character is drawn from its exciting combination of astringent tannins, mouth-puckering fruit acids, unfermentable sugars that give rise to a subtle, soft floral sweetness that combines well with food. Well, with well over 120 different varieties still being grown, and its own dedicated festival that I'll talk about at the end, Perry is finally back on our dinner table. In 45 minutes, this will be a very personal explanation of why I am passionate about Perry. It will include 2 tastings, so we've got 2 tasting bottles in the box of Perry. We'll be going through both of those, and you won't have to wait long for us to start that. There isn't time to cover production of Perry, its faults, tasting and things like that. I will give a brief overview of its commercial future. And other than how we've approached the challenge ourselves, I will leave you to ask questions at the end or during the session. I hope to cover a brief history of why Perry has a terroir centred around the 3 counties, and an overview of why this region remains of global relevance for Perry. So notwithstanding that Perry orchards are being planted everywhere, we are still very, very important, and people come to us. So let's get on with it. What is Perry and what isn't it? And this is from my personal viewpoint. Each producer tends to paddle their own boat. We all do things differently, and we tend to follow our own personal intuition. The smaller producers would probably say that Perry is not pear cider, but is a unique beverage made from Perry pears. No concentrates, flavorings, or dessert pears will have been used. Using dessert pears is akin to using top fruit apples in cider. The finished product often lacks the complexity of the pure product. It can be very popular with consumers who want a refreshing drink not some organoleptic roller coaster ride, which can happen with single variety ciders and perries. Right, let's open our first bottle. This first bottle is our own product, Merry Legs, which is so this is a combination. It is still fermenting, so some of that fizz will have come from the fermentation process. It was only bottled last week, but it has had a little bit of extra carbonation just to lift it, and I'm pouring it, and it seems to be producing a nice level of bubbles, not too much. I didn't want it super carbonated, so we've just dropped a bit of CO2 in there, having chilled the product, just to lift it slightly. Immediately, before I've even tasted it, the nose is amazing. It's quite a dark perry. So this perry was pressed on the 14th of October last year. So it is only just over 6 months old. The original specific gravity was 1056. When we put this in the bottle last week, it was 1011. So it's dropped 45 points. So you'd classify this still as a medium perry. Very, very dark. It is incredibly perfumed on the nose as well. It's exactly what I was looking for in a perry. So it was very difficult because we've got 28 perries, single varieties that we made this year, and 18 blends. And I wanted something that was a bit special. So I was looking for something that was very young, green, yes, but had those essential qualities that we look for in a Perry pear. So lovely, deep, smooth flavour, very light tannins, hint of toffee in there. Probably best drank out of a flute. By all means, make your comments now or save them from the end and we'll have a discussion. Very good. Jeremy likes it. See how we're getting on. So what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, frankly, if they've only ever brought us Perry Pear, I'd be happy, but they've done a bit more than that. Yes, I'm driving later, so I can't have too much of this. There's some question whether it was the Romans that brought the Perry Pear here. It could have been the Normans. Andrew Lee's informative session talks about how all pome fruit, apples, pears, hawthorn, medlar, quince, started out in the Tian Shan mountains of Central Asia. How they eventually got to our shore is a moot point, but they were probably brought here intentionally to be planted and harvested. We will never know for sure if this was the migration of humans or the passage of other animals that achieved this. If it was the Romans, then the cultivated pear in this country has been here for 2,000 years. If it was the Normans, it's been here for 1,000 years. But archaeological evidence indicates, following the discovery of pear seeds in middens, which are their food dumps, Neolithic activity. So we're talking about between 4,000 and 2,500 BC. We were already involved with pears in some form or another. Now, our native wild thorny pear, Pyrrhus parasta, probably hybridized with some of these more recently introduced thornless cultivars, Pyrrhus communis. And one suggestion is that these wildings are the true Perry pears. There is another pear in this country, the Plymouth pear, which I think we're still undecided whether it is an indigenous pear. It looks very Perry pear-like though. So any discussion about Perry normally involves somewhere May Hill. There is a tradition that only great Perry can be made in sight of May Hill. What is very clear is in that the Middle Ages, the markets of the three counties, Gloucestershire, Herefordshire and Worcestershire, and to a lesser extent Monmouthshire, were important trading posts for culinary pears, these hard pears that were of special importance during the winter. High levels of vitamin C would keep you healthy. And they were traded probably using the existing waterways, the Severn and other tributaries of the Severn. The Severn Vale itself became a massive orchard, and this is going back to the 12th, 13th century. And and it partly planted and partly self-seeded. And its bounty provided the impetus for the development of Perry. And it is likely that that centering of the growth of the Perry trees in this area has produced this terroir. It is likely that there were upwards of 300 different varieties of Perry Pear. Many, unfortunately, have now passed into oblivion, and that's one of my tasks to prevent that from happening. But in the same way, similar traditional Perry enclaves have developed in France, in the Normandy and Anjou regions, in southern Germany. Around Lake Constance, there's a high number of Perry makers. And then again in Austria, the Most Barons and in their Mostviertel quarter. We were hoping to get there this year on our European tour to collect product ready for the autumn festival, but lockdown has prevented us from doing that. We still hope to do it possibly later this year, but I suspect we're going to have to put it off till next year. So if any of you know of any Perry makers in Europe, outside of this country, please do let me know, and we'd like to be in contact with you. New orchards and enterprises are also being developed across the world involving Perry. New orchards being planted throughout America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And we are still having new orchards of Perry being planted in this country. A recent one I know about that Alice is staying at now is down in Cornwall. So Perry is a truly global product now. Now, whether it is the terroir, the soil, the topography, the climate, or its genetic makeup that affects its organoleptic properties, its taste, its sight, its smell. And we also talk about touch, the mouthfeel. It matters little. What we do know is that it is a unique taste and it is not like anything else. At the source of this complexity is an astringent tannin profile combined with a variable level of acidity and a softer mouthfeel and increased body. And this stems from the residual sweetness as a result of there being unfermentable sugars, sorbitol present. And then to top it all off, you've got an ester-based aroma that I often describe as confectionery. It does smell like some kids' sweets or something, floral gums. You might describe that as a floral rather than a confectionery taste. But the breadth of variety of tastes and styles mean that there truly is a Perry for anyone. For everyone as well. And if anyone says to me, oh, I don't like Perry, and I'll find out what they drink, I'm guaranteed I can find something even within our limited range that would suit them. So reasons to be cheerful, part 3, that's Perry, isn't it? It will be interesting at the end if we have a discussion of how people arrived at their own personal positions, their own views about Perry and what they do. So please, at the end, let's have a discussion about that. Now, apologies for this mildly narcissistic interlude to this webinar, but bear with us, it gets better. A quick introduction of myself. Now, I wasn't allowed to make my own cider until the age of 7. I've been steeped in cider for over 50 years. I know it looks like it. My first dog in 1972 was called Scrumpy, and I guess my liver was doomed from an early age. So I think this is my 52nd year of making cider. Now, I've only been making Perry for about 22. But in 1980, I went to university and I got a degree in bar management. The syllabus was a BSc in agriculture, but I didn't let that get in the way of my life learning. I quickly found my niche and was trained up by Bass Charrington at Burton-on-Trent in those days for free. Not bad for someone who drinks only cider, although I do drink beer now. I decided we should stock Perry in the bar, but the only ones I could get through our wholesaler, and you can guess it, were Babycham and Babycham Dry. I still managed to get a degree and the journey had started. And yes, one good thing leads to another. In 1984, I moved to Shepton Mallet to be nearer the love of my life, Babycham Dry. And I discovered Tucker's grave. So if anyone has been down to that neck of the woods, I don't know whether it still exists, but this was my first cider house. It's basically the front room of someone's house. It's in Bishop Auckland or wherever it is. I can't remember now. And you go in and you sit in their front room effectively, and there's little bagging boxes and things, barrels all around the windows. Then it all went pear-shaped. I had my first and last motorbike accident. my first new car, my first career job working for the government, my first marriage, my first child, my first early midlife crisis. But salvation was just around the corner. My love affair with Perry didn't start until the new millennium, when I moved up to the Three Counties area and was fortunate to land on an estate with a very old pear tree, probably 200-300 years old, and 15 acres of mixed orchards, including unidentified Perry trees. And that's what started me. It started me researching Perry. And it became clear that it was very much a cottage industry traditionally, or a farm industry, where every farm had its own trees and made their own individual Perrys. The same variety may appear in various locations with a different name. Farmers would often give it their own name. The key to identification was often the colour and the size, the shape and the taste. Now, the publication of Charles Martel's excellent tome and access to the national collection at the Three Counties Showground increased the desire to know more. Peter Mitchell organised the early Perry festivals and raised the profile of Perry. Jim Chapman's 2 national collections at Hartbury provide further resources. But it was Jim's work to progress the genotyping of all Perry purveyors that provided some much sought after answers. Since then, I've been able to locate 6 unknown different varieties, and the hunt continues. Wandering around neglected orchards, finding forgotten fruit is the stuff of my dreams. But that is when the fun starts, trying to match the fruit to the known varieties. Some are easy, such as Blakeney Red. Some you could do with your eyes shut. Others, such as Rock, with its extreme tannin, that's all about its taste. One bite of a rock Perry pear and you know instantly what it is. Barnet, literally, you could identify if you were blind. It's so heavily russeted, it's the only pear that when you pick up in your hand, feels like that. And what is amazing is how many different shapes, sizes, and tastes these Perry pears have. So we've talked about Perry for long enough. It's time to open the second Perry. So this is hopefully very, very lightly sparkling because it's only been in the bottle a short time, and Jeremy's products you can bottle age for a significant period of time to improve the level of carbonation. Level of sparkling. Yes, very lightly sparkling. Excuse me, I'm going to sniff the bottle often. Gives you a better indication. So, and apologies for my pronunciation, but I believe this is Cefnid Hyfryd, which means lovely ridge in Welsh. And this is from Cwm Maddock. So this is Jeremy and Claire Harris. Single variety, naturally sparkling, medium Perry. So this has not been carbonated. This is a pure in-bottle conditioning. It was pressed in September of 20 and it was bottled in December of 20. And he would have bottled it at the stage to give the level of carbonation in a product of a year old or whatever age he wants. We, at the last Perry Festival, had 4 of his products, which proved very, very popular, all with completely different tastes. We had Thorn Barnet, Betty Prosser, which was probably the most popular, and we had one of his green horses. Right, enough talking, let's taste it. So this is cool. That's beautiful. It's got a real soft citrusy finish, quite lemony. Gorgeous aroma as well. And this is why the work that's being done by Jim Chapman at the Orchard Centre and the work that all of us are doing by promoting Perry is important. This is made from 2 trees of only 3 trees of this variety that have now been identified using the genome tests. So it might have been attributed as another type of Perry pear, but we can now say that these 3 trees in existence, and this actual bottle was made from 2 of them, is unique. And that is what's lovely out there. Here we are producing single variety, unique Perrys. And, you know, arrogantly, we probably think we know what all the varieties are, but we haven't even scraped the surface. I suspect that when we start digging, another 100 will turn up within the next few years. One of the difficulties, sorry, I'm going to go back for another taste of that. The mouthfeel is lovely. So you have some tannin, the acid coming through. That's gorgeous. That is gorgeous. And very hard to pick one of Jeremy's to have here today. So he did come up and we tasted a couple, and this one was a clear winner. So really, really nice. We wanted something with slightly different character and things. But one of the difficulties with Perry pears is traditionally they are so slow to fruit. Hence the expression pears for your heirs, meaning that if you plant pears in your lifetime, you're unlikely to benefit in your lifetime from that planting. Back in 2014, we started planting perry trees and restoring some of the orchards on Bromsbarrow Estate in Gloucestershire. And we can see Mayhill from the old cider shed as well. Over the next years, we managed to plant over 300 rare, critically rare and endangered varieties of Perry pears. That's one of mine, Merrylegs, is regarded as critical. This one of Jeremy's would be regarded as extremely critical. Only 3 trees left, and it wouldn't take much of a wind to blow those 3 down, and then we've lost that. So it's important that we get out there, and what we're doing is identifying new trees, propagating them, grafting, and things like that. Some of the orchards, we use Pyro Dwarf and Kirkensala rootstocks. They are colloquially called semi-dwarfing. They're not. They are still vigorous rootstocks. The difference is they will come into fruiting a lot earlier than using the wild rootstocks, Pyrrhus communis. And what we try to do is to mix it up. So some of the orchards will just have Pyro Dwarf, some will just have Kirkensala, some are mixed. And Jim Chapman's done a lot of research on rootstocks as well in his other experimental orchard. We have one of the big orchards on the estate that we planted, that the trees are in at 50-foot spacings because they are the wild Pyrrhus communis rootstocks that will get to 50, 60 feet tall, and they will look stunning in 100 years. Other orchards there are already coming into fruition. So there was an orchard that we'd planted on an old ridge and furrow system, and they've been fruiting for a couple of years already, and they're going away nicely. At home, we've planted a mixture of rootstocks. So up around the boundary of the property, we've put in the big communis, perry trees, and that will, in sort of 50, 60 years' time, be outstanding. And we've now pretty much full here. We've got 60 trees planted here at home, a lot of it using grafted material that we've obtained ourselves, varieties we've found. We recently managed to isolate what we believe is a lost variety called Jennet Red. In the adjoining village, there's a harvest pear. And a harvest pear was, every farm would plant harvest pears, and these would fruit very early, and it would allow the farmer to produce perry in time for the harvest workforce. So this harvest pear that we're talking about, we harvested on the 4th of August, so very, very early. And within literally 6 weeks, it was ready for drinking. And it was very rapid fermentation. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and has disappeared completely. We did graft that, and the graft took, and the new tree is now going into the community orchard in the village as a way of, maintaining this. But there must be hundreds of very, very similar harvest pears dotted around, and we just need to go out and find them. Our brand is Ragged Stone Cider and Perry, and we are very fortunate we source all our own fruit from orchards we manage within the 3 counties, Gloucestershire, Herefordshire and Worcestershire. The team consists of myself, artisan mad scientist, my wife, delivery driver and tolerant benefactor, Lucy, apprentice, not so apprentice, perry maker, and Alice, who, although she's no longer with us, is with us. She still gives us assistance and help us at shows, and she's head of social media, social media guru, and she plans, because none of us do. Our former apprentice, Lucy, now she has her own brand. She's pushing Perry forward, and she will be involved in a lot of the work with Jim Chapman at the Hartbury Centre. We produce a range of perries from draft still, dry perries, suitable as aperitifs, through to bottle condition, high-end champagne-style perries. All of our perries are made from hand-picked fruit, full juice, no added water, fermented using only wild yeast, unpasteurized without the addition of any sulfites. This is our choice, and it does not necessarily mean ours is better. And this non-intervention approach certainly has more challenges than other options. We try to avoid blending perries, preferring to offer the customer a wide range of single varieties that are constantly changing as we open new batches from the start of April onwards. Our perries aren't really kept for a long time and don't keep because we don't use any sulfites or anything. There is the risk of deterioration, spoilage and things like that. We accept that. We just have made a choice. We'd prefer not to use sulfites. We don't stand on our soapbox and preach and tell other people they have to. This is just our choice. Perry has a character that stands up well to some strong food. Ideal pairings include lighter cheeses, fish, chicken, dry perry as an aperitif, as I've already mentioned. But also, we actually drink perries also with stronger food, curries and things like that. Now, back in 2019, Alice organised the Perry Festival. I did a few bits and pieces, but most of the organisation was down to her. At the Three Counties show, we had 300 square metres of space with a strapline passionate about Perry. And this included a display by Jim Chapman from the Hartbury Orchard Centre of 112 different varieties of Perry pears. So literally 112 plates of Perry pears on the stand. Then we also had a 6-metre bar, and we did something different. We tried to offer people tasters of more than 63 different perries from all over the world. That's how we had America, Germany, France, Czechia, Austria, Wales, none from Scotland, unfortunately. And what I wanted to just give you is a little insight as to why we are so passionate about Perry. And it isn't about the money, but a lot of you, it is about the money. So I'm just going to touch on it very briefly about the commercial aspect of Perry. Now, traditionally, Perry was a very minor contributor to our sales, 10% if that. But we recognized its potential to contribute further. So we started to apply our Perry knowledge to produce better perries, and we found that sales doubled. In the early days, we had made in barrels and we produced some stunning ones. As I kept the barrels, my results became less and less. Then came the pandemic. And at that time, we only sold our product at farmers markets and shows. And all of those were cancelled. So things were not looking promising. But one of our helpers, and again, it's Alice, the planner, decided to set up a social media profile and created a platform to sell online for home delivery just within the Three Counties area. So we haven't gone global. We haven't even gone national yet. We're very much home boys and girls. And as a result of this, our sales are up over 40%. So that's cider and Perry on the previous year. And we increased the proportion of Perry sold to 33%, 1/3. There aren't many producers out there who sell 1/3 of their produce as Perry. But the vision of giving customers variety, we produced 37 different single varieties of Perry that year. We created a monster. Last year, we tried to rein it back, but we still managed to produce 28 different single varieties and 18 blends, 46 different Perries, which is almost a new product every week. Please, don't try this at home, kids. It was a nightmare. Our cider shed looked like we'd been burgled with containers everywhere, from 1 litre right up to 640 litres. But this is what our customers wanted. And now the sales of Perry through Facebook are running at 49%. So that's almost half is Perry. And when you look at it financially, if you go back 4 years, we've had a 7-fold increase in the financial contribution of Perry. That's massive. If you want to find out more about us, take a look at our Facebook profile. Just type in Ragged Stone, Cider and Perry. Go and have a look at that. Now, this talk is nothing about me. I've been talking about what we've done, very egocentric. But if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants without hopefully treading on their toes. We are constantly struggling to produce good perries. My heroes in this game are diverse. Some of them I've already mentioned, those that have worked in the orchards and things like that. Others are represented here in our tasting box and other sessions at CraftCon. Many are not. People like Dennis Watkins, Tom Oliver, Simon Day, Dave and Fiona from Barter Street, Albert and Mike from Ross on Wine, Gabe Cook, the ciderologist, Jeremy from Hollow Ash, and of course, Kevin Minchin. Now, fast forward over 20 years, and I don't have a dog called Scrumpy, but I do have a cat called Perry. I still don't know much about Perry. I'm still learning. I thought I knew a bit about cider. It's 22 years, I know nothing about Perry. Apart from the fact that it requires a lot more attention to the detail than cider. Yes, it's a lot more difficult to get it right, but when you do, wow. Perry is dangerous though, especially at this time of year. Please be careful. When it is in blossom, drive anywhere and you're distracted by that old tree in the corner of a field you just passed. You stop, you try to find out who owns the field. Do they know what it is? And then you come back when the fruit's ready for a sample. If you've been clever, you've asked their permission. If you're not, you're off scrumping again. And it tends to fill up your life very quickly. What's the future? Well, the future is to promote the work of Jim Chapman and the Hartbury Orchard Centre, the Genome Project. Build a dedicated Perry Club is one of our ideas. It could be a physical Perry Club somewhere, such as at the Orchard Centre once a month, or it might be a virtual Orchard Club, Perry Club. We want to help some more new entrants become cider and perry makers and be passionate about perry. And finally, find some more lost perry trees and enjoy some good perry. Now, the Perry Festival, I mentioned it several times, but it will be taking place this year from the 24th to the 26th of September at the Three Counties Showground in Malvern. It's within the Orchard Pavilion. They are probably going to restrict numbers again, like they did last year during the difficulties, and they were restricting them to 6,000 a day. The tickets sold out very, very quickly. So book your tickets in advance. We are aiming for 100 perries to taste, but it's highly unlikely we're going to be able to undertake our European road trip to get round the perry makers and the moss barons to pick up this resource. So we're going to probably put that journey off till next year. And if you're from Europe or you've been to Europe and you've met perry makers, please let us have their details. Similarly, it would be nice to have a friend in each country to coordinate our activities and assist. I honestly suspect this may have to be put off, but it would be nice to make more contact with like-minded individuals. What do I hope? That this short talk, may have enthused you in some small way to go out there and explore perry. Either try to make some, if you have a tree or know of unwanted fruit. Please don't go scrumping. It could be my tree you're scrumping. Go out there and taste some of the perries on offer. The breadth of perries nowadays are amazing. Ross and Wine, just hold my hands up. Amazing guys. But thank you for listening today and for being part of an amazing community of passionate cider and perry enthusiasts. And all credit to all of you, because without you, this is all pointless. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. Fascinating talk. And I don't know if you saw it. There's a couple of questions have popped up in the Q&A column. Starting with Arjen, whose surname I shan't try and pronounce, who asks, how do you prevent acetic acid formation resulting from malolactic fermentation without the use of sulfites?
You don't. You just have to be really careful. So hygiene is essential. So we are very careful that we don't use sulfites. We're very careful about our cleanliness, how we do things. we tend to go from one container to another. We try to avoid siphoning directly. We always drop CO2 in as a blanket on top of the liquid. Those issues often, because the citric acid is converted into the acetic acid. And that's one of the secondary problems of malolactic fermentation. We have been known to cold shock our stuff to try and prevent this happening. We are still working on lots of techniques to try to get around the problem. We haven't solved it. That is why our perries are drunk very young. At a small level, acetic acid isn't a problem. It was always traditionally there. And I'm not saying we've become snobs. I'm saying that we might have moved away from the traditional perry that was probably produced. We have become less tolerant of acetic acid. It's seen as a fault in the same way that mouse is. I'm one of these people. I'm not mouse sensitive. I know some people absolutely, it turns them. But for me, if I make a comment, oh, this is quite a meaty perry, it normally means it's got mouse. And sometimes we tell people this is a known fault. Sometimes we don't, and we watch their reaction. What we have found, and it's fairly obvious, is that if there is a level of acetic acid production, that might be more suitable for back sweetening to produce a medium or a sweeter perry. When you use, but a simple dry perry with a level of acetic acid, I don't think is undrinkable. And people get used to that. That's sweet and sour taste as well. So no, there's no easy way around it that we've found yet. Cold shocking I've come the closest to. And what we basically do is we try and slow the yeast down. So typically what happens is you get round to April, May time, the temperatures are rising, and then starts that secondary fermentation, the malolactic fermentation. If you can find some way of slowing down that process, either speeding up the fermentation through the winter, which is very hard with a perry, because a cider goes off with it races off with a massive head and then declines. Perry is just a very slow process on fermentation. Now, maybe if you were to use heat, such as some people use in their fermentation tanks, to get your fermentation completed before the end of winter, then you can get your product bottled as quickly as possible. Jeremy bottles his product very early. We also have tried using pressure. Pressure has prevented the acetic acid formation most of the time. So in theory, if you were to get your product into the bottle and pressured, i.e. carbonated, bottle conditioned, bottle fermented, then that might solve the problem. That's my idea, but I don't know.
Very much. And I had a question to a comment that you made about reusing barrels. You indicated that by reusing barrels consecutively, that the perry inside them declined somehow in quality. Can you talk a bit more about that, please?
I've tried cleaning my barrels. I've tried using a chain, physical cleaning them, rolling a big chain around in them. I've tried using sulfur candles. And I've always found that after the initial 1 or 2 good years in a fresh barrel that's come from a distillery, I've done it in brandy, I've done it in whiskey, I've done it in bourbon barrels, fantastic, all of them. But after a period of time, I've noticed that it's declined. Maybe what I should have done was to drain the barrels down, dry them through the summer so the staves loosen slightly, throw another bottle of whiskey or brandy in, and then recharge them. I haven't done that. I think it could be about, I haven't also topped up my barrels because the angels will insist on stealing it. And I've noticed that if I were to, I have topped up barrels on occasions and I've suffered less with that problem. So I think it's a double-edged sword. One, the barrels do physically have the bacteria present. And secondly, I'm not excluding the air well enough. And Perry is very unforgiving. Would be my comment.
And Chris Mansfield has continued on Arjen's question which is, do you have problems with and how do you prevent mouse, and particularly ethyl acetate? You did cover off mouse. I threw away quite a sizable amount of Perry last year that was contaminated with ethyl acetate, so I know the pain.
Yeah, I mean, we did have someone on here earlier who is very sensitive to mouse, and I think she's always amused that I can't taste it. I think, again, it's about cleanliness. I have found that pressure inhibits mouse. So if I can get the product in the bottle as early as possible, then I'm very unlikely to get that taint coming through in the bottle. I haven't had it yet. So it's either got the taint before it goes into the bottle, in which case I don't put it in the bottle, or if it hasn't had it and it gets in the bottle, I seem to be fine. My insensitivity probably means I'm not the best person to talk to about mouse, because there are people out there who regard it as a severe fault and throw everything away, as you have done. Horses for courses. It makes good vinegar. So don't throw anything away.
No, I hate throwing stuff away.
Yeah, we get the same price for our vinegar as our cider. So £6 a litre. So it's a valuable resource.
No, very, very good. Yeah, no, the Perry I threw away last year, I mean, it really smelt to me like nail varnish remover. It was pungently ethyled, and no amount of blending or mixing or otherwise would have saved it, I don't think. But like you say, horses for courses. Yeah.
Send it for distilling. It might be a suitable product that would distill and produce a rather interesting result.
That is true. I've certainly experimented with distilling slightly faulty ciders and found that the fault chemicals come off at a different fraction from the alcohol, so you can revive perhaps not the best cider. Never done it with Perry, though. Never done it with Perry.
That happens with acetic acid, you see. The acetic acid doesn't come off into the spirit. So you can have quite an acetic cider or Perry, but following distillation, there is none of that in the final product.
Yeah. Who else is asking questions? Are there any other questions or comments to make to Chris of Ragged Stone? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Perhaps people would like to share some of their personal journeys, how they got to where they are. What do people think about theirs on taste?
If you want to join the screen, just click on, is it possible, I think, to click on the share, and then I will admit you to the screen, I think is how it works.
People want to talk?
So far, 0 requests in the queue.
Yeah, I do appreciate. Thank you, Chris. Not being able to taste mouse is an advantage, but also a disadvantage, because I have to rely on other people to taste it. There is a poll as well, so if people could fill the poll in. So if you go to the right-hand pane where it says chat, next to it there's a little box called polls, and I've just put a poll up there quickly to see who's drinking Perry and why people have come to listen to this today.
Thank you, Chris. I've noticed also a new question from Andrew Root, who asks, what is general perception on pressing pear and apple in the same day? I don't have a problem with that. I wouldn't ever do it, but per se, I wouldn't. The wild yeasts are slightly different on the fruits, would be my comment. So if you're not going to use sulfites and seed it with your own yeast, then that might be a disadvantage or an advantage, and you might end up with a funky product. And until you've tried it, you won't know, really. Just from a practical point of view, if we're pressing apple, we press apple. If we're pressing pear, we press pear. We will use slightly different techniques for the two. So I tend not to mix those on a day. But
I'm sure other people have other views. Alice has just reminded me, if anyone wants to donate a couple of bottles to the Perry Festival for this year, we are trying to get to the 100. So donations gratefully accepted.
Another question, Chris, from Mark van der Veek. Do you sometimes use pressing aids like rice hulls, talking of pressing, or is it never needed?
What we do, no, we don't use it. At times I've wondered when we have something like Malvern Hills. So this is a particular variety of Perry Pear, and it's one of the first in the year. And it seems to ripen as it drops, because when you check it on the tree, it's underripe. And then the next day you go, it's all on the ground, and the birds have eaten it and the bees have eaten it. And it's very frustrating. What we've found we do is when we've got something that's overripe or of a softer texture, we will press it back through other pulp. So for instance, we would press, say, Green Horse, and you've just got the pulp left and very little juice left in that. And then we'll press a softer one through that thicker, and it stops it spurting out. Comments on different hydro presses have different hole sizes. And you will find, for instance, that some of the Speedle presses, they're more suited to some of the softer perries than some of the bigger hydro presses, the sort that Ross and I use and we use. And you can use different size nets as well, different mesh nets to control how you're pressing it. There are different ways around it rather than adding anything. And because all of the pulp is used, so all the apple pulp is fed to cattle, and all the Perry pulp used to be fed to the cattle, but we now compost it and make use of it ourselves. We would prefer to have not other things mixed in with it, would be my comment.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. I hope that answers Mark's question. Darlene has asked, and Jeremy has asked, can you remind us of the Perry Festival dates and how we get hold of tickets, please?
24th to the 26th of December. So that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's normally 2 days, but because of the restriction of numbers, they've pulled it forward to the Friday as well. If you go to the Three Counties Agricultural Society website, so if you just put in Three Counties Autumn Show, and you can buy the tickets online. The other shows that they ran during the difficulties were very restricted on numbers, and almost all of them had sold out prior to the day. So if you turn up on the day, you won't get in. And that's what we were expecting on the autumn show. So a heads up is just to plan a little bit for that one.
That is a very good tip, because I would normally just turn up. So yes, I shall secure my ticket ahead of time. And I think you said December, but I'm assuming you actually mean September.
Sorry, September, if I did.
24th of December is a different festival.
24th, 26th of September.
Gotcha. Brilliant. Any other questions coming through? Have you all done... Oh, the poll has gone up. You now have 23 votes. And 3/4 of the voters are regular Perry drinkers.
Good, good. Maybe next CraftCon we'll get a 3rd bottle of Perry in the box. So that'll... And also it would be nice to have some other sessions talking about the production side of things, because it's quite clear that people's questions are probably going to relate not to planting, but to, right, I've got Perry pears, I've had this go wrong, I've had that go wrong, or what do I do with this? I haven't met a cider maker or Perry maker that won't give free advice. That would be one of my comments. I think we are all part of a community and we all share knowledge very openly. There are very few of us who refuse to disclose how we do things. So contact any cider maker or Perry maker. If you like their product, talk to them. If you don't like their product, still talk to them, but don't ask them advice.
Very wise. And another question from Andrew Root, who says, it's a rhetorical question, really. I know you don't use yeast, or you don't deliberately add yeast, I suppose, but if you do have to, what yeast would you use?
I think it's treble 1/8. Is it?
Is that the champagne yeast that people EC treble 1/8?
Yeah, That's Tom Oliver's fault. We were at a show saying how good we were, look at us, pat ourselves on the back, how organic we were. And then he said, "You're still adding yeast. Why?" And I went, oh, okay. Then we stopped. And that wasn't hard at all. And our product was slightly different, but there's more variation as well. So there's more to play with. We were possibly going down a slightly more bland route where everything almost tasted the same. It wasn't that extreme, but it wasn't that difficult to produce something that tasted the same year in, year out. Whereas now it's a lot harder, and it's all down to the blending for the ciders. But the Perrys, we are blending Perrys. That's probably more out of necessity for pressing time and containers. Next year, maybe we'll do 30, 35 single varieties. My aim is to get up to some really good numbers. And once production comes in at the Orchard Centre, we'll have a lot of access to the rarer fruit as well. But yeah.
It sounds exciting.
Well,
you mentioned...
Sorry,
you mentioned in your talk that you started making cider at the tender age of 7.
Yeah.
Was that enlightened parents, or a little experiment on the side that no one knew about? Or explain how a 7-year-old got into cider making.
My parents had apple trees and orchards, and they later had vineyards. And my first wife had vineyard and things like this. So I've always been steeped in alcohol.
It's very much culturally relevant to your own personal background. Yeah, how fascinating.
Yeah. But Perry, no, I'm a newbie. 22 years, I'm a newbie. We know nothing. It's people like Mike. They're the font of wisdom when it comes to Perry.
There is probably no substitute for experience when you're fermenting a seasonal product with wild yeasts. I would agree with you on that. You can never get too much experience.
No.
Right. Oh, Alice has said that she was 9 when she started her cider and perry making journey. So yes, it's not as uncommon as I thought.
Well, perhaps we could have a few more comments. When did people first make their first ciders and perries then? Go on, there must be somebody under 7. Or maybe starting really late. I know some cider makers that have only started in their 50s. They've retired early, first pressing at 29. Yep.
Yes, Chris in at 29. The first alcoholic drink I made was ginger beer, but that was not really pressed out of anything, and that was very much on the sly. Not trying to let anyone else know what I was doing. But I think I was 12 or 13 at the time.
Aged 40, you see. So that's the other thing. We can all be a part of the Perry revival by doing a couple of things. Firstly, it's taking an interest in Perry and buying Perry and drinking Perry. Planting orchards is all right, but someone's got to harvest it and make it. And I think too many times people go, "I'll plant an orchard," and they haven't thought through the process of what's going to happen to the fruit. So we get orchards being planted and then grubbed up. And also restoring some of the old orchards, because their terroir, their biodiversity is better than anyway, rather than a new bush orchard. I'm not criticizing new bush orchards. I think that any orchard is important, but let's make use of the resource that is still there before another housing estate takes over another orchard and we see Perry close or whatever.
I agree. If I had £1 for every orchard close or Apple View or whatever the names they come up with for these horrible developments, I'd be a rich man by now. They've all been built on.
Well, thank you everyone for your time, and I hope it hasn't been too boring.
No, far from it. I think it's been a wonderful session. Thank you very much, Chris Atkins. from Ragged Stone, Cider and Perry. Fantastic talk and wonderful tastes as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fiona.
I don't know if I should make announcements about. I think the next session is at 2 o'clock, I think, which gives you a bit of time for lunch. And I don't have the schedule in front of me. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing you all at later sessions. And once again, Chris, I wish I could applause you and get the whole room to applause you audibly. But I'm sure they are all applauding at home. Thank you for your...
Sorry, Tom. Get them to buy another. Thank you, Tom, for moderating this session.
Nothing at all. It was really wonderful to have you talking. That was much more of the effort. So thank you very much.
Take care, everyone, and drink responsibly. Don't spill it.
Brilliant. All right. See you later on.
Bye.
Bye now.